I pivoted into HR with zero experience, y'all. Zero. And I'm here to teach you on my channel how you can do this too with no degree, no certification. We're going to walk through exactly how you can do that. I remember when I landed my HR role, I know that the job description said you must have 5 years of HR experience or equivalent. I had zero, right? I was coming from a retail background, zero. And I didn't have an HR degree. I didn't have the certification, no official HR title or anything like that. Just 5 years as a retail manager who was bored out of their minds. I was so bored, I was tired of stocking shelves. So if you've been told you need more experience, you need more credentials, you're reading the job descriptions, and you need more time, you think you need more time before you can pivot to HR, this is the video for you. So dial on in so you can learn how you can do this just for yourself. Okay, so I'm LaShaunique. I grew my career as a global HR professional, and I have a love supporting and helping people pivot their careers into HR without having a traditional background, growing up into HR, or feeling like, you had to start HR at birth. Like, I do not believe in that. And I know there's a lot of old guard people that feel that way, but that's just not the truth. There's so many people that pivot or that have your background that pivoted just like you or just like you desire to. And I did too. I did it too. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how I was able to make the pivot from a retail manager to HR in 90 days. 90 days. This doesn't have to take years. You don't have to wait 90 days just to get a certification first, right? So I'm going to help you understand the actual steps I took. And here's the thing. If you're watching this and you're like, but I already know I don't have HR experience. I already know what these job descriptions saying. Listen, I thought the same thing. That's exactly why this worked. By the end of this video, you're going to know why you don't need HR experience to land an HR role. And honestly, a lot of you that are watching this, you already had exposure to HR. You already done HR without the title. And so you know that you have the experience that you need. So let's talk about the strategy I use in order to get past the 5 years required on the job description. Also, it said PHR preferred, right? But again, not required. So let's talk about it. So imagine this. I was killing it in my role, doing really well, getting all the praise, all the glory, lots of, take on this project, take on that project, talking about, my future in the organization. And I honestly, there was a lot that I was doing that was exciting, like managing a team. I love managing a large team of 40 people. I like dealing with some of the customer escalations. I love getting my team super motivated. I love turning underperformers around. I like the hiring. But the thing is, you can be good, you can be great, you can be like stellar at something. And that's the exact reason why a lot of people stay stuck in their roles, because they are good at it, right? Like, I have so many clients that have been in their pricing analyst role for 5, 6, 10 years. And they're like, I've been wanting to pivot for 5 years, right? So it's so easy to use it as like a crutch, but I didn't let that be the reason why I stayed, because I know my boss, loved me. I was valuable, but every time I wanted to grow or even get feedback, they would be like, nope, things are good. Just do the things that we've been talking about. And when I would express that I really wanted to go into HR and would express like, okay, what do I need to do to get there? Again, it would be like, okay, essentially focus on your job energy. And so I realized like all the places where I was more intrinsically motivated, those were the areas where they weren't priority. And so I had to take it upon myself to be like, okay, how many times am I going to go through this inventory cycle? How many times am I going to do the Black Friday 2 a.m. shifts where like I'm just no longer satisfied? How long am I going to stock shelves when I know I'm just no longer in it? I'm just no longer in it. I started to pull my hair out for my schedule. I started to like really resent people making comments, having to plan things out 6 years in advance. It felt like, I know that's dramatic, but like it literally felt like sometimes talking to my family, I'm like, well, I only have every other weekend. So, maybe it's April, but maybe September we can hang out. Like, seriously, it felt like that sometimes. And some of the problems that we were solving is just no longer motivated me, right? Which just made everything feel icky. So I was good at it. I cared about parts of it, but ultimately I knew I had to make the decision to get out of there. And I was like, I'm getting out no matter what. And I quit my job without a job. So here's what most of you are doing, which I'm glad I didn't do. You get stuck looking at the job descriptions. So I've already mentioned, right, the 5+ years of HR experience required, bachelor's degree in HR or preferred, or PHR, SHRM certification preferred. I very rarely see the language that it's 100% required. But again, I had none of that. 0 HR titles, 0 HR degrees, 0 HR experience outside of through my management experience. How are you supposed to compete with people is the thought that comes up for most people, especially in this market in 2026, right? It's March 2026. A lot of you are like, okay, but like it's so competitive. What is it? Right? So you start thinking about other people, comparing yourself to what they might have, their qualifications, like how will I even compete? Right? So I convinced myself, like many of us, like, okay, maybe I just need to take a step back, pay my dues. Everybody told me that I had to get a certification before I even stepped in the door. And I don't know, I just knew and felt in my gut that that probably wasn't true. And I knew that I had the transferable skills. I just hadn't been calling it that, right? Like I had hired people, I had coached individuals, I had put someone on a PIP before. I understood how to manage and motivate. I was handling employee conflicts, right? My direct reports had conflicts, navigating company policy changes. There was a lot of change management in my role as well, like pulling out brand new machines and managing schedules. I had to manage schedule and budgets and payroll. And so I wasn't missing HR experience at all. I just, again, didn't have the direct title and I may not have known the exact or direct language. And so I knew I had to get a grip on what that language looked like. So there's a couple strategies that I used. Instead of trying to match the job description word for word, because I could tell that was tripping me up and it was making me feel like I was just only doing tasks when I knew what I contributed was much greater than that. I also made it a point to make sure that I didn't have the mindset of apologizing or thinking like, oh, my background is not enough. I see that a lot in people. I stopped saying like, I know I don't have HR experience, but like I learn really fast and I'm a quick learner and I will be able to take on anything you put my way. I also stopped waiting for the certification to make it mean that I had the skills and to give me permission to go after what I wanted. I did share that I was going after the PHR, but I made it very clear that I wasn't waiting for that in order to validate that I was more than qualified to move forward. I translated my experience, my retail experience into the HR language, right? So that was step one. So instead of saying things like, I managed a team of 15, I would talk about how I developed that team, right? So lab talent development and performance management for 15 associates. And honestly, in my case, it was about 40, right? I talked about turnover. I talked about, recognition programs. It's all about how you position the work because a lot of you have the experience, but you're not positioning it in the way that they're looking for. Similarly, so like if I were to give you a step 2, for example, I talked about impact, not task. That's why I got rid of thinking about the job description because the job description only confuses you, right? It only confuses you. And I realized that pretty quickly when I realized people were asking a lot of follow-up questions. Okay, well, like, well, what did that mean? What did you do? What was the impact? So, leading with impact is really important. Instead of saying like, I handled employee scheduling, which I did, it would be like, okay, what was the outcome of that? I optimized our workforce planning or, even if I stick with scheduling to reduce overtime costs, right? To reduce overtime costs by 20% while maintaining coverage during our peak hours. There's a huge difference, right? One is strategic and the other is just like getting tasks done. And so a lot of people will say to me, but LaShaunique, that's what I did. Well, again, you have to stop seeing your work as just tasks. And you have to know that your work actually is impactful, right? And it's like, oh, well, it feels like I'm lying or I'm fluffing things up. Honestly, to me, it feels like to me, what that shows, I'm trying to think how to say this because I like to be super direct. It's that you don't see value in the work that you do or how it relates to the overall business, the overall people, right? And so you're underplaying it, you're undervaluing it because maybe it's not what you wanted to do. But like even stocking shelves to this day, I would never talk about like, oh, I only stock shelves. Like I just don't give it that energy. Like I see everything that I did as valuable. Me understanding inventory was super valuable because actually the first client group that I supported, they did inventory. Right? They were an operations team. They did inventory. So instead of downplaying all the time, make sure that you think about how your work applies to solving bigger business problems. All right, the third step that I'll give you is that I actually did apply to roles that I was technically underqualified for. Right? Again, going back to that job description, the big theme. You're gonna have to step out on faith, boo. You're gonna have to step out on faith. And yes, you can do the job because you have those transferable skills. I applied anyway because I knew something most people don't. The job descriptions are wish lists. They are 100% wish lists. They're not requirements. People write job descriptions. Let me say again. People write job descriptions. Their minds can be changed. Y'all are seeing job descriptions too much as black and white. You're seeing them as written in the sand. You're seeing them as they cannot be changed. The original job description that I was hired off of originally said that you must have 5 years of HR experience. But my manager wanted me, so she changed it. She literally changed it. We change job descriptions all the time, especially now that I've been in HR for 6 years. We change job descriptions all the time. Once we get in there and we're like, oh, we want this person, we can change all the time. It can happen for you as well, even with all the talent in the market. So again, I rewrote my resume, making sure that I translated my retail experience into HR language, that I led with impact, not tasks, and that I went after those roles that I quote unquote didn't have the experience for. And then 90 days later, I landed an HR generalist role for 60K. Right? I did not take a huge step back in pay. I was able to essentially almost make a lateral pivot at a company where I stayed for 6 years. And so, in the best part, they asked me about my direct experience, and a lot of times they were really excited about the non-HR experience that I had. They asked me about problems I solved, the teams I've led, conflicts I've navigated, right? We do all the same stuff. All of us are collaborating. All of us are doing process improvement. All of us are doing, no, it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing that, right? You just have to answer the question, can I do the HR work with the transferable skills? And so what I did was make sure every time I was answering a question, the answer was always 1000% yes, right? And you can do that on your resume very, very easily. And once I got in, and so a lot of you are like, okay, well, what if I can't do the job? Once I got in, I just knew that I could do it. I believed in myself, and I was promoted 4 times in 5 years. I went from HR generalist to global HR business partner, leading an organization of 20,000 associates, right? I eventually got my certification, but I'm like, to this day, I'm like, that was not worth it, y'all. That was not worth it. My company paid for it, so I wasn't out of the money, but if I had to do all over again, I would have continued to focus on how can I focus on skills and tools where I sell myself, right? And that's where a lot of you are lacking. It's in terms of selling yourself. Okay, so if you're thinking again, I still think I need to get certified first. That's the market that we're in. I'm telling you that you're going to be disappointed. I have had so many clients that come to me where they have an MBA with their focus on their master's in human resources, or they got a PhD, or they have the certification. I remember a client telling me, I got this APHR and no one cared. No one cared. And I was like, I know, because literally as an HR manager, as an HR leader, if I was hiring someone, they're like, yep, I got my PHR. I'm like, that's one sentence in the entire interview. Those are 3 letters on next to your name. It's disheartening to see people really equate their skill set to a certification, because knowledge is not experience. The experience you have leading projects, the experience you have coaching and motivating teams, the experience that you have already is way more valuable than those 3 letters or 5 letters or whatever it is, right? And the person sees that and that's it. And you all are like really banking that those 3 letters will make a huge difference, right? Companies hire based on what you bring to the table and the experience that you bring. They hire people that can solve problems. So you have to stop underselling the things that you have already done. All right. So if this resonated with you, if you've been wanting to pivot into HR, definitely hit subscribe and do yourself a favor so you get notifications on my new videos that I'll be dropping at least once a week. You can also head over to my podcast, the HR Pivot, so that you can see more there as well. And next week, I'm going to be talking more about breaking down the resume framework that I use to land this role, the exact bullets and things that I use a different language. And I also have some amazing client stories coming up. And if you drop any comments below, I will also respond to them. So don't leave anything out. And very soon, I will be announcing my next masterclass for your resume. So stay tuned. All right. It was amazing talking to y'all. Y'all have an amazing day. Bye.